The idea behind the scenario is that there are these two great legendary stars who are dead, but they are living in some kind of other world beyond the grave, and they long to return to Earth. So first Bogart appears and calls Marilyn and begs her to come to Earth. Of course, Humphrey's a real macho guy, and he only has to call Marilyn for her to come. They decide to meet in Montreal, near the place Jacques Cartier. So they meet inside a famous building. When Marilyn appears in the building, she's not made of flesh and bones, but of scales, then stone, and then gold. Humphrey gets rather impatient to see her in the flesh, but it takes a kiss like Prince Charming to bring her alive completely, and then the whole romantic episode begins. It was a big challenge to synthesize Marilyn and Humphrey. In Max's room, there is somebody there whose movements are filmed, and then he is given a sort of computer look afterwards. But we can represent anybody, living or dead, and we can give them all kinds of expressions that the real person has never made necessarily. We have always wanted to create electronic actors. In our previous film Dreamflight, we developed an imaginary being called Hippie who was made out of wire. He was very simple, but he had emotions. But we wanted to create real actors so that we could simulate all their movements and expression completely by computer. In our new film, if people couldn't recognize the actors that we were attempting to represent, it would have been disastrous. So that was the big challenge. But also we can make our actors do things that they have not necessarily done in reality. For example, in the love scene, Humphrey finds Marilyn beautiful and falls in love. It's really the first time the computer has been used to completely synthesize emotions and love feelings. Time is very important in Rendez-vous in Montreal because Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart are dead and are living in a world where there is no time. But they planned a rendezvous in 1987 and come to life. So to emphasize this atmosphere, we use the clock because it seems to me that this symbolizes earthly life. And perhaps because I come from Switzerland originally, for me, clocks are an important part of the decor of everyday living. So looking through a beautiful book on old clocks, we wanted something rather old. We chose this clock, which is actually in the Decorative Arts Museum in Prague, and which has a very computer-like structure. And that's how a clock came to be in the film Rendez-vous in Montreal. We had to choose a setting for our two famous characters, and we very much liked the idea of an old street, and that's how we chose Bon Secours Street, which is an old quarter of Montreal. We tried to recreate the Bon Secours building exactly. And to do this, we finally took the plans of the building and reconstituted its exact dimensions in the computer, so that you really have the impression that you are on this street. At the beginning, the computer needs to know the shapes of the characters and even the detail of their hands. So a sculptor first sculpted Marilyn's and Humphrey's hands, and then the information was entered into the computer, which cannot see. The surface of the hand is divided into small sections, and then the corners of the sections are entered into the computer. This is the classical digitization process. In the same way, we had to create Humphrey's thumb and Marilyn's thumb so that their hands correspond to the personalities of the characters. The heads and shoulders of Marilyn and Humphrey were digitized in the same way from plaster models. The technique used involves taking photographs of the models from various angles and then entering all the points on the small sections into the computer. We first obtain a picture of the character made up of lines. We can then fill in the areas between the lines and finally add color and shading.
When you want to animate a face, there are two things that have to be considered. First, the muscular structure of the face, which causes facial expressions, has to be understood and simulated on the computer. But also at a higher level, there are the expressions themselves, which must represent speech and emotions. Speech, syllables, and emotional reactions, like a smile, a wink, or tears, have to be represented. We don't film all our expressions as in Magnenat, nor digitize them and enter them one by one as in other films. We construct them. By combining about 30 different parameters in different ways, we can construct an infinity of different facial expressions. And we can also construct facial expressions for one actor which are quite different from those of another actor.
La simulation pour Played Against Sam de Marilyn. Là, ça, c'est la simulation. Je l'ai regardé, j'ai quelques
What you see here is an example of the simulation of Play It Again, Sam. The lip movement seems not correct. We try to modify the lip parameters. For example, we can say to the computer, modify the value of the opening of the mouth. And to see if the animation is correct, the images are recalculated in shading, and then re-evaluated.
Play it again, Sam.
Another thing which has to be simulated is the phenomenon of grasping an object, for example. To grasp an object, the hand has to be used, and the joints of the hand must move correctly. And if I pick up this book, well, it's obvious that the book has to move with my hand. And when I turn my hand, the book must turn along with my hand, and that's what we can do now. We can grasp an object and move it to a new position, and it's the arm which essentially guides the object. So once the object is in my hand, all my movements will make the object move too, so we could quite easily get Marilyn to hold a tennis racket, for example.
What we are doing here is simulating the movement of our characters on a computer terminal. It requires about 15 minutes of computer time to calculate each image on 8,600 VAX computer. This is much too long to judge the movement. So what we do is we reduce the number of colors and the quality of the images and then store them on the terminal. By doing this, we can show the images very quickly, one after the other, as in a cartoon film, and we get the illusion of movement. Here you see our synthetic actress with fewer colors. She waves, and now she winks. All the images for Rendez-vous in Montreal were calculated using the software Human Factory that we developed at Miralab.
Ah ben là, la scène du verre, on va voir si elle le prend bien. Là, elle le prend. Là, il ne faut pas qu'elle traverse, que ça traverse. Non, ça n'a pas l'air, c'est bon. Oui.
So now, to film the images, we chose 35mm film because that's what most of the festivals require. The images are first read from magnetic tape, then they are transmitted to a computer terminal, and finally photographed on 35mm film. So we can now create truly synthetic actors. Nothing would prevent us, for example, from bringing together in my office beside me John Kennedy, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and Gorbachev say. We could sit and have tea or a discussion, so we can make our actors say anything we like, use any expression we want while respecting their personality. The possibilities are endless. It's really wonderful.